everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox, here again to remind you that this is the best season of your life. This show is about having a journey of self discovery so that you can discover your true, authentic self and live the life that you are created to live, a life of pleasure, a life of joy, a life of contentment, a life of excitement, a life of adventure. The life that you desire. But most times we can't get there because we don't know who we are. And we live a life that's been imposed upon us, an identity. So we try to perform based on the expectations of external influences. But when you go through this journey of self discovery, you start discovering things about yourself. And with that, you gain courage and confidence to live your true, authentic self. You don't have to perform, you don't have to try to please people, you just really live. And as you purpose in your mind, I always say that the purpose of life is pleasure, and I say that unapologetically, is to enjoy every day, every moment. Things happen, we deal with it, we figure it out. But if your thought process is the purpose of my life is pleasure, then you will see how things come your way that will unfold in that way. It will unfold before your very eyes, things that brings you pleasure. And if you are trying to discover what your purpose is, you will find it because you will come into things that lights you up. The thing that lights you up, therein lies your purpose. But in the meantime, enjoy your life. But in order to do that, you must know who you are. And I'm telling you, you are in the best season of your life. The fact that you are alive and can tell your own story makes it the best season of your life because you're alive and you can tell your story. And I said, as I shared in my show last week, make it a compelling story. As I was doing inventory in my own life, I came across, I start thinking of experiences that I've had and growing up and so forth, and my time in boarding school where I was kicked out 3 times. And, I shared that before where I was kicked out 3 times. My dad got me back the first time, the second time. The third time, they said, that's it. We can't have her here. Anyway, went back to Panama, and they thought something was wrong with me, but I was fine. I was just missing my parents and missing my environment, and I guess that's just the way that my whole system rebelled against, my whole body, my whole psyche rebelled against the system. And I was thinking about that word rebellion today, and the more I think of it, rebellion, when you say rebellion, people talk about a rebellious child and a rebellious, kid and so forth. It has a negative connotation when you say rebellion. But in essence, to rebel is really to challenge the system. And if you find something that doesn't work for you, if you find something that is totally, you know, that your system questions, then you question it. And that's what I believe that happened to me as I was growing up. I question everything. I challenge everything. I remember, again, when I was in boarding school, they didn't serve meat. That was a religious place. They didn't serve meat. And again, I didn't grow up in a religious household. My mom was a woman of standards, and values and moral. She grew up that way, and very helpful to others, and just she was virtuous. My dad was a working man, and because his parents died when he was like 7, so he anyway grew up with family, but left Costa Rica, came to Panama, and he was a working man. And his whole desire was to be able to provide abundantly for his family, and he did that effectively. So he was not exposed to religion or anything of that nature, but we were normal. We had a good childhood. We had a just normal childhood. But later on in life, at a very vulnerable moment, I became religious and lived that experience for a long time until I met my husband. And then with my husband, we lived about 15 years in religion and so forth. And then 15 years ago, we said enough, and our life has been blissfully happy, in that kind of way where we really are ourselves, and we are really enjoying the fullness of life. Why? Because we are consciously aware, we live intentionally, with intention. The things we say, the things we share, our behavior, our practices, everything is with intention. We're not just at random, or by default, or no, we are intentional about the things that we do. And because we think in our minds, we know that the purpose of our lives is pleasure, then that is the way we live in everything that we do. When we, not only for ourselves, but our relationships with our friends, with our families, just everyone, the things that we do, we're guided by three principles. Uh, um, I don't know why it does that. I have no idea why those sparkles shows up in the background or where it comes from. Let me see. When I did that is when it happened. See, I don't know what causes that. I don't know if it's my laptop or if it's from the StreamYard. I have no idea. I'm gonna try it one more time, so just bear with me. Well, it's not doing it now. But anyway, I was saying that we live by three principles: love, kindness, and compassion. And that works beautifully for us because you know what happens? It allows us the freedom to just be. And as we travel throughout the world and meet people, it allows us really to share love from our hearts and really embrace people and not judge people or criticize them, or try to size them up, or try to expect that they think the way we think. We try to appreciate other people's opinions, their perspective, their perception, their customs, their habits. It frees us up to embrace all of that. It's really remarkable what it does to you when your mind is free from judgment. You don't judge yourself. And then another thing also, it takes away fear. It takes away the fear of being, or that someone is looking upon you to judge you, or that someone is gonna judge you or come down and punish you. And and that's what, in my experience, that's what a religious life does. Because there are these rules, there are laws, there are regulations that you have to live by. You can't go here, you can't go there, you can't drink this, you can't drink that, you can't you can't associate with these kind of people, and if they don't believe like you do, you can't. We don't have to think about that anymore. It frees you up. It's just so hard to articulate the freedom it brings to your mind. We're not, you don't have to please some uh, deity. Why? Because I'm telling you, you are in a place of love. You're in a place of love where you can go wherever. And that's it doesn't mean you're a pushover. But the point is, you can love all people. And because you are mindful of your thoughts, your behavior, your actions, your practices, you're always thinking, how can I help this person or that person? And you refrain from judgment. You try not to judge people because you don't know. Everybody, like, coming to the US from Panama, where I was born and grew up. My culture is totally different. It is totally different. And when I came to this country, it was, I came here as an immigrant. I first am an immigrant with a totally different culture. I remember when I was in high school. It's so funny. When I was in high school, because in Panama, I grew up there, and had my debutante, and we dress a certain way, and very 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 feminine, very polished, and so forth. And I remember I was in St. Joseph High School in New York, and I was invited to a party. Now, I lived with my aunt, and I wasn't, she did not allow me to, like, stay out till late, even though I was, like, anyway, I think it was the year I was graduating, and they invited me to a party. This is hilarious. I don't know why I'm telling you this story, but one girl at school invited me to a party she was going to host at her house in the basement. And I got dressed in a dress with my pearls, and my fine jewelry and so forth, and my purse and so forth. And I went to that party. Look, I am sure they thought I was a freak, because, first of all, I think the party may have started at, you know, was going to start like at 11 o'clock at night. Well, that's the time that I'm getting ready to go back home. I get there at 10 o'clock, and, I have my purse, and my pearls and so forth. And, everybody's in jeans and boots and, sweaters and, hairdos and things of that nature. I was completely out of place. I was totally out of place. I was. I'm sure they laughed at me. I looked like a freak. Now, when I say a freak, I was nicely dressed. My pearls, nice silhouette, nice dress, and a purse and so forth. I was going to a party. And when I told my aunt that it was going to be in the basement, she wasn't quite sure about that. But anyway, she let me go. And so I went to the party, and got there at 10. Nobody was there except for the hostess. And talking about a different culture. So I said, I came a little early because I have to, I have another party to go to. My curfew was like midnight. I had to be home before midnight. But I didn't want to say that because, these were, we were all like the same age, I think like 17 or whatever. And but I had to leave like at 11:30 to get home at before midnight. And here I am with my, just so prim and proper. And as people were coming in, they were in their boots and jeans and sweater, and just like super casual, but like cool casual, like cool casual, not like prim and proper. I was so out of place. Just imagine. So when I talk about different cultures, and they didn't know how to relate to me, they just like, everybody was nice to me, but I just didn't fit in. I just did not fit in. And they looked at me as if I was crazy. Well, I mean, they were kind and so forth, but it was just, that was such an experience I had. But that, I remember that so well. And about 11:30, because I was looking at my watch, did I enjoy the party? Absolutely not. They were playing some music. I did not even know how to dance that. My whole jam was salsa and merengue. And I did not even know how to dance. I talk about cultural difference. So I had a culture shock. It was a shock. But now that we have the freedom to just be ourselves, if somebody, if I have a party and somebody comes with their, hijab or something like that, hey, look, that's I'm in a position now where I can see that, I can embrace it, I can honor it, and really have a great relationship with everyone. So when we talk about rebellion, it again, it's not a bad thing. It's just challenging the system. It's challenging the system. And as I think of that, I start to think about this character in the Bible. When I was in the religious circle, I used to teach in Bible school and so forth. So, I do know the Bible. Haven't opened one in 15 years, but that's neither here nor there. My life reflects the values that I live by, and my relationships also reflect the values that I live by. And I'm so happy to be in this position where we can just have the freedom to just be and to you have no idea the burden that judgment brings upon the psychic, your mind, your whole body when you live in a place of fear, because all of it has to do with that fear of punishment. Fear, it's a powerful emotion, because and it's all triggered by the thoughts that you have. So anyway, we're cleansed of that kind of mental mindset. But anyway, I think about this Bible character and I started questioning, because and it is Vashti. And for those of you that are not familiar, that may not be familiar with the Bible, Vashti is in a book of the Bible, the book of Esther, first chapter. Vashti was the queen. Vashti was the wife of King Xerxes, king of Persia. I think she was his first wife or something. Anyway, she was a queen. She was a real queen, and she was the wife of King Xerxes. And he was just very extravagant and just anyway. So King Xerxes decides he's going to have this big party, this huge bacchanal, this huge jam. And it went on for 6 months. He invited the nobles, the elites, and all the principals in the high places and so forth, all the nobles of the city, and they all came, mind you, the men. And they went on into a stupor for days. 6 months. What is that? 180 days? 6 months. 6 months. And as time was winding down, in the meantime, Vashti had, a banquet for the wives and so forth. She would have, her aides get stuff together and she held a banquet. I imagine it would be the 6 months while they were in their, drunken stupor. The man, she was holding a banquet for 6 months during that time. I'm assuming there's no account of that, but I'm just assuming. So when it was winding down in the 6 months, King Xerxes, decided that he was going to open the party to every guy in the town. Imagine that. It doesn't matter what social ranking you belong to, what socioeconomic rank. He invited everyone. He wanted to make sure that everyone came to his party, provided booze, wine, liquor, all of that. And he's like, drink up, drink as much as you can and drink and drink. And it was like a big jam. In the meantime, she's over there with the women and so forth. And so they were all, by this time, they were drunk. They were all drunk. And he said, he calls his aides and he said, I want you to bring Queen Vashti. Bring her here and tell her to come with her crown. I want to display her beauty. She was one of the most beautiful women in town, and her beauty was unmatched. She was just beautiful, beautiful, and he wanted to show her off. And the claim is, there are different translations, different interpretation. The claim is that he wanted her to come out only with the crown, totally nude. And so when the aide went to her, and again, that is a claim. That is a claim. When you read the whole story, some claim that he wanted her to come out nude and, just with the crown so that he could display her beauty to all of the men that were there in that circle and so forth. And so the aide went to Vashti and said, the king would like you to, has summoned you to come out with your crown. And Vashti is like, what? Of course, she knew that they were out there drinking to a stupor. She knew that they were all drunk and just, out of their mind. And I could just imagine Vashti's like, what? No, uh-uh. You tell him I'm not going. So they go back and they tell King Xerxes that she refused to come. She's not coming. And he was livid. So he called the council of the city and asked them what should he do, because he's like, she is defiant. She has defied my requests. I summoned her to come and she said no. And they said, well, you cannot have that, because if you don't do anything about that behavior, then our wives and all the wives in the city will start rebelling against us. So she needs to be deposed. So he deposed her. She said, fine. And she left. This is the story. I get the impression that Vashti knew who she was. And she's like, no, I've got dignity. I've got integrity. I know who I am. I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that. I am not going to. Just imagine having to make that kind of decision. You are the queen. You are the queen sitting next to the king. And you say no? You don't tell the king no and, not think there would be consequence. She said, no, I'm not coming. Imagine that. I mean, that's bold. I ask myself, you kind of, I mean, think of what you would have done. And these are situations that we are facing every day when we have to say no to situations. And sometimes it costs us something, relationships, money, perhaps. I mean, it could cost you. She said no. And he said, Holly, 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 go. She was deposed from the throne. And when I read that story, I cannot help but to admire Vashti. I admire that, because just think of it. I mean, your own personal life. Just think of things that you've had to put up with. Some people put up with stuff because of financial situations. Um, they're afraid of being alone. Uh, they don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. They have no family. They have no money. And so you just put up with situations day after day after day. I just wonder, what did Vashti do? I mean, did she get did she get a severance pay? Did she get, some kind of inheritance or some kind of spousal support? Did she get any money when it said she was deposed? Are you saying that you gave up your kingdom? You're a beautiful woman. You just had to go out there and parade, but your integrity. Vashti knew who she was, and she said no. Think of it. She said no, I'm not doing it. I'm just getting comfortable. See, I can fold my leg and so forth. Anyway, she said no, I'm not doing it. So she was deposed from the throne and had to leave. Who knows if she left empty handed? It doesn't matter. The point is, she was okay with that. How okay are you with the things that you may be putting up with? Things that you need to rearrange and change and get rid of so that you can come into your true, authentic self, your own dignity, your own integrity, who you really are. What are the things that you are putting up with? What are the things that you are tolerating? What are the things that you are tolerating? When you say Vashti in the religious circle, and when I say religious circle, I'm talking about the Christian circle because that's the religion that I was in. But when you say Vashti, Vashti is not a name. When Vashti left, Queen Esther was placed on the throne. She became the wife of King Xerxes. And most of the story in First Esther has to do with her being held or prepared for such a time as this to save the children of Israel. I don't want to go into that whole thing, but to that whole, because this is not a teaching on that. I'm talking about the principles that cause Queen Vashti to leave. So when you hear Vashti, what Vashti is associated with is rebellion, defiance, disobedience, and disrespect to the king. Nobody embraced Vashti as, a woman of confidence, a woman of substance, a woman who knew who she is, a woman with self respect, a woman that's assertive. Nobody associates those attributes with Vashti. Everybody, you ask somebody, oh, did you know who Vashti was, or what's the story of Vashti? And they're going to tell you that she was disobedient, she was defiant, she was rebellious. As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, when I was at church, when we attended church, um, uh, they had the women's ministry. Every month there was a breakfast, and they would bring in a speaker or something, generally a speaker to speak to the women, and it was like a breakfast, from 9 to noon or something like that. So I said to the director of the women's ministry, I said, you know what? Why don't we do something different? Or you, because she was the director. I said, why don't you do something different this month or next month, and break up the pattern a little bit. I said, why don't we create a panel uh, for discussion, a panel of like four. And I said, we could, because I had read that story of Vashti. And when I read it, I immediately admired Vashti. And that was just something because I knew that the times that I had heard preach about Vashti, it was always in a negative connotation. It was always negative. It was always, she was defiant, disobedient, disrespectful, and in that tone. And so when I went back and read the life of Vashti, to me was like, what? And again, I was deep into religion, but I thought, wow, that is just amazing. She is just a woman of substance that knew who she was, and a woman that had self-respect and dignity, that it doesn't matter that it was the king or her husband. She was not going to go out in the middle of all the drunken men, including her husband, with her crown, naked. And even if she wasn't naked, you know how they dress with those silhouette, and so it would have been pretty much the same. But one account that I read said that he expected her to come out naked so that they could enjoy seeing her beauty, how beautiful she was. So I said to to the director of the women's ministry, let's have a panel of two and two, two that understand, myself and someone else that can see Vashti from that viewpoint, and two that oppose Vashti, that see it totally different. And she was like, yeah. So anyway, she had to ask permission because that was the whole. I wanted to bring, it's interesting because it's like I wanted to bring some normalcy into the ambiance at church. I wanted to bring something that was relevant, that was new, that was fresh, that provoked us to think differently, to exercise critical thinking skills. At that time, I didn't think of it as critical thinking skills. I just thought, let us think and let us see the value in that behavior, that it wasn't bad, that it was just a woman that knew who she was and had dignity. Because if you ask me, if my husband asked me to do that, anyway, that just wouldn't happen. So I I said, okay, let's do that. So the director of the women's ministry said, well, she's gonna have to ask permission to do that. So she asked permission, and I was there present because I had to kind of explain um how it would unfold. And when I said the panel, I made reference to The View. The View is a talk show, a daily talk show in the US, comes on every day, and there is a panel, and they panel of like five women, different backgrounds, different experiences, profession, life perspective, and they bring up topics, and each one give their opinion, and it's very diversified because it's again it's based on each person's perspective. Sometimes some can provide facts and some their opinion and so forth. So it's called The View. So I said, let's do something like The View, except that this would be the topic would be Vashti. And so we explained it to the pastor's wife, because she was over the women's ministry. And so I explained. I said, and when I said Vashti, of course they're like Vashti, and alarmed to begin with. So I had to really explain it and show my point of view. It was difficult for the pastor's wife to even recognize the attributes of Vashti, simply because everyone sees Vashti in a negative way. And I said, in order to drive my view across, I had to use an example, and I said, just imagine you in the middle of a Super Bowl. If I said, just think for a second. I was just bold. I said, just think for a second. You have a Super Bowl party at your house, and all the guys are sitting around in the living room, with, drinks and beer and whatever, and your husband says, let's call this person Mary. Mary, bring me another beer, and come out just with your, with a swimsuit or whatever. I said, would you do it? Of course, that example did not set well, but I had to drive it across. The point is, permission was given to have that whole type of presentation, that panel for the women's ministry. And so there were two of us that saw the virtues and the values that Vashti bring to the story, and two were totally uh, opposing. Said she was defiant, and women have to be respectful and obedient to their husbands, and all of that. So it was quite interesting. But I'm telling you something. I would say that probably 99% of the audience, the women that were there, they yielded to the criticism, the negative aspects of Vashti. They could not see, they could not see the attributes. And I said, because I was on the panel, and I pointed out to someone, I said, would you do it? I said, what about in the Super Bowl? And I posed the same example. I said, what about if in the Super Bowl, your spouse says to you, bring me another beer and, come out here in the swimsuit I just bought for you for our trip? Would you do it? They took offense. They took offense to it. My point is, when rebellion becomes a part of your self discovery, but it's not a bad thing. It's when you challenge the system, when you challenge the things that you have been taught, when you challenge traditional views and values, old conventional status quo, the norm, when you challenge it, it appears that you are rebellious, but it's not rebellious, it is growth. It is development. You are evolving into a new person. So don't see it as a negative. Don't see it as defiant or rebellious or disrespectful. No, because when you are getting to know yourself, self-love grows, and you start. No, wait a minute. I don't. No, no, no. I don't. That may have been okay yesterday, but today it's not. And you start seeing yourself differently. That's the whole idea. And that's why when I studied the story of Vashti, I could appreciate. Now, I don't know what her motivation was. The point is, she said, "No, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that." What? All these guys that are drunk, they're all drunk because he just liquored them up and just provided all the booze. And it says it was like, and this was, by now it was the 6th month, because it was 6 month party, and it was winding down. And he said, "Come on out here with just your crown, so that I can display your beauty before all these drunken men." She said no. And I said, "Bravo to Vashti." I said, "Bravo, Vashti." A sign of rebellion? Maybe. I see it as her walking in her dignity, walking in her true self. She's like, "No, wait a minute. I may have succumbed to that yesterday, but not today. I know who I am, and that's not me. I'm not going to do that." Now, if it's your husband sitting there by himself, you know, of course you'll do that. You go out, you take everything off, you put on your crown, and you walk before him and you enjoy his company. But before the whole city, all the men that came to drink, and by then they were so drunk that who knows what. Just imagine that. And I'm sharing this with you because some people, and I know, because the fear is so strong within them, that people are afraid to make changes, to challenge the system. And even though in your mind certain things makes no sense in life, but you're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to make decisions for you, things that's gonna work for you. You're gonna have to make decisions for you. You're gonna have the courage to make decisions for you. I mean, I don't know where. I mean, Vashti was some kind of woman, because she had courage to say no to the king. To the king. I don't know if she, like, did you realize that you were gonna be deposed? I guess she didn't care because she just left. She just left. So, for the changes that you have to make as you go through this journey of self discovery, some of it may be labeled as rebellious. Oh, she's just rebelling against this and rebelling against that. And this system wants to have us in a place where we become so ignorant, so mindless. You don't think. And even if you think, because I know for me, my mind was so seared in that way until you, and you don't know, when you're in that kind of environment. And I'm sharing, when I talk about traditional customs and social construct and conventional norms and status quo, the more I think of it, I don't really, what I have come to learn for me, for myself, I have come to learn that my issues are really not with, social norms, because, certain courtesies, that's just a given. Protocol, manners, good conduct, those are things that I embrace. What I have come to realize, that most of the things that I resist and put the brakes on are my religious indoctrination. That is just my experience. So when somebody, I don't get into any kind of religious discussion, because that's not my interest. I don't do any of that. But most of the things, when I think back, like when we travel and we meet someone of a different, totally different religious persuasion, we can stop and chat with them and listen to them and just really learn a new culture, a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things, new habits, new behaviors, and you open yourself to that, to humanity. You embrace it, and you don't just cut somebody off because you can't associate with someone that doesn't believe like you do. That is nuts. That is crazy. I embrace diversity. I embrace inclusion. I embrace all nationalities. I don't care what they are or who they are. I embrace that. And I have the freedom without any form of fear or judgment of punishment or criticism. No. You open up, it frees your mind, because it just frees that whole chip. You just free up your mind to be able to embrace people of all walks of life without judging them, without judging them. And I make sure that, even though I was, I resist any kind of religious, uh, influence. When I say I resist it, I will tell you straight up. It's like someone invited us to church for Easter. And I said, no, we don't go to church. We're not religious. I just made it clear. And they said, no, it's not. No, no, it's just to eat, because you're gonna have a big feast after and so forth and whatever. And I said, okay. I said, let me just mention it to Noel. And Noel said, no, we're not gonna just go to eat. He said, no, we're not doing it. And that's exactly what I would have said. And we just didn't go. But we have learned to respect others. If I go out with someone uh, to have dinner, and this person prays over their food, that's fine for you. That is totally okay for you. I respect that. I respect that. But I don't necessarily have to participate. But it gives you the freedom. It gives me the freedom to be, to the freedom to embrace, to respect who you are. Except that, you have to know that it's okay. It should be okay with you that I don't participate, and not judge me. But then again, I don't. I don't really, that doesn't become my issue. If somebody judges me, that becomes their issue. But the freedom not to be afraid, the freedom not to be, not to live under any kind of constraints, rules and laws, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and you can't go here and you can't go there, and if this person is involved in this, you can't associate with them. It's a mess, causes anxiety, a lot of anxiety and depression. It's a mental psychosis. So a lot of my, when I talk about this journey of self-discovery, I just go back to when I was home in my country. I go back to when I was home in Panama. When I said I lived a normal life, I didn't have any concerns. I didn't have any of those concerns. I didn't There was no worry about anything at all. I got my bike, went bike riding, got my roller skates, went skating, went to the clubhouse with friends and had some poppy seed muffins. And what else did we do for fun? We just played jacks. We played jacks. Some of you may not know what that is, but anyway, we just had fun. My dad, when I was, I we didn't get a lot of chance to like go out at night, and that just wasn't part of our experience. But growing up, it was normal. It was normal. We had no, and even though, I told you we were in Catholic school, and I did my first communion, confirmation, and all that. It's still, we were so, my mind, when I go back, it was just so free of all debris. And as life would have it, that's why sometimes we embrace uh the younger generation, because they think differently. And if we go back and y- they just think differently, when you were younger, just think of yourself. You didn't have a lot of, I mean, I'm talking about a normal childhood. You didn't think about, you didn't worry about if you're going to eat or if you're going to have a place to sleep. And I'm not talking about situations. People have issues. I'm just talking about a normal childhood. Growing up with, in a household, there's going to be breakfast, there's going to be lunch, and there's going to be dinner and snacks throughout the day. Snacks. We had no worries. We had friends, and the only thing that would, if we, you know if somebody had some kind of a situation uh with the law or something like that, we would that, but our environment, we did not even have that. We didn't have, and that's just me, the environment in which I grew up, we didn't have that kind of situation, so we were able to, you know embrace anyone. And being in Panama, Catholicism was the major religion of in most Latin American countries. But my mom was she subscribed to a church. It's Episcopal church, even though she didn't kind of go very often, but that's what she did. But the point I'm making here is to have your mind so clear and free from fear and all the restraints of the rules and laws and regulations and all things that's prohibitive, because of fear of judgment and punishment. With this eclipse that just happened, which was just something very formidable. I didn't kind of prepare for it. I stayed home, but that was fine. I said, my husband had to go to the office, and I said if he wasn't at the office Monday, that we would have probably find a place to go and see it outside. But I was fine being at home, and called my husband. I'm like, and we talked about it as it was happening and so forth. So that was pretty cool. But but before it happened, uh the messages on social media was just crazy. Was just crazy. Some people said it was the end times, the end of the world, and all this fear, fear related messages that if you don't know who you are, a lot of people fell into that fearful. I mean, I am telling you something. I saw people really display a psychotic type of fear because of the eclipse. And I didn't get it. I didn't get it simply because I know what an eclipse is. Just the moon just kissing the sun. They just meeting up together. Happens every few years. But everybody added meaning to it, meaning, spiritual meaning. It's the some of it is some of it was just plain crazy, just plain crazy. And of course, there are things that I am aware of, end times and you know Messiah coming back and all that. All that religious stuff is not part of my makeup at the time. At this time, it's just not it. So I don't subscribe to any of that, and therefore I have no fear when it comes to that. When I'm when I die, and that's it. And I'm not afraid of dying. I mean, that's a that's a destination for everyone. All of us, will die. And once that is registered in your mind, then you're okay. And I'm not worried about what's going to happen after. No, at all. So it is incumbent upon you, my friend, even if you are labeled rebellious, challenge the things that no longer work for you. Question everything. Ask questions if it doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't matter about the collective. Whatever the collect, and I was part of the collective. I used to teach things that didn't make sense to me, and now if I look back, it's like it's almost embarrassing. It's like Cynthia is like, what in the world? But that was my reality at that time. I am so grateful. I am so grateful for where I am now, where I am now in my life. And this journey that I'm going through, because this journey, there's no destination to this journey. This is a journey of self. And I embrace that unapologetically. I don't have any excuses or kind of, no, I embrace the self, 100% self. So if I'm talking to you, guess what? You're getting all of me. And that's the way it ought to be. To get rid of fear, because anything you do, if there is just a speck of fear in your mind, if you have any fear, really, you're not going to get the answer. You're not going to open doors or go through. No, because fear hinders you. It's like a padlock. And especially if it's in your mindset, if it's set in your mind, you're afraid of this, that, the other. I'm telling you, it's just not going to happen. And that's one thing you have to get rid of, fear. And if people call it rebellion, so be it. Just like Queen Vashti. If you are in religion today, ask about Queen Vashti and do that experiment. If you are in a religious circle, regardless of where you're at, ask about Queen Vashti or go yourself and read it. Read Queen Vashti. Esther, it's the book of Esther, chapter 1. I think it starts from, I don't know, verse 10. Just read it. And see what how it affects you. What because you may think, yeah, she is defiant, she is rebellious, disrespectful, doesn't regard her husband with honor. You may think that way. But then again, put yourself in her place and question yourself. What would you do? And think of it as a Super Bowl. This is just one Sunday. Think of it as a Super Bowl. And for those of you, again, this program streams in over 100 countries. Super Bowl in America is the culmination of the best teams playing football. Think of it as or Olympics, whatever, Super Bowl. And you have guests, and your husband said, the bikini that I bought you for our trip, I want you to come out here, bring me a beer, and I want you to walk around so that the guys can see your beauty. I mean, even if you're flirtatious, but then again, you may be okay with that. Vashti wasn't. She said no. And I identify with Vashti. I would say no. Now, if my husband is by himself, absolutely. I'll sit out there with my crown and, bird suit and enjoy the game. But, not in front of a whole neighborhood of men. She said no. And she was dethroned. Certain things, as you're going through this journey, my friend, you may be ostracized, you may be rejected, you may be talked about, you may be unfavored. There's so many things that you may have to face, but as long as you're walking in your own integrity, knowing your dignity, and knowing what you will tolerate and what you won't, once you are discovering who you are and not being afraid, that's the key word. Because if Vashti was afraid, she would have said, she would have said something. Do you mind if I put my robe on? Or, put my robe on, or with the crown or whatever, tell him if it's okay if I put my robe on or something, or try to find something in order to mitigate the compromise that she would be taking, making compromise with her own worth. But she said no. And I salute her. Totally relatable. You will have many decisions to make as you go through this journey of self discovery. You're going to have a lot of decisions to make, but it's worth it. It is worth it. It is worth it. It is worth it. Because remember, the purpose of life is pleasure. If you're walking in fear or judgment towards someone else, there is no pleasure in that. You have to have the freedom to be your true, authentic self, unapologetically. The freedom to be, the freedom to choose, the freedom to select, the freedom to be your true, authentic self. And with that, my friend, I hope that is a lot of food for thought, because that's what I got this week. This whole rebellious thing and how it's labeled and categorized and things of that nature. So I'm going to leave you with that so that you can introspect and do inventory and see what you may need to change or to revisit and so forth. Just remember, every week we have a date. 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here. And if you don't make it, if you gaslight me, then you can set the date. 24/7 on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, you can click in. It'll be streaming 24/7. In the meantime, if you would like to drop me a note, go to my webpage, thecynthialinoxshow.com, and you scroll to the bottom and you can send me an email and we can chat. I am also a certified life coach. A life coach is very helpful for some people because you need sometimes a guide or someone to give you the support or the encouragement that you need. It's not for everybody. But if what I share resonates with you, then I will be glad to be that person for you. It doesn't have to be me, it could be anyone else, whoever you connect with. The bottom line is that you are created for a life of pleasure and you must live it now unapologetically because this is the best season of your life. And with that, I am going to say au revoir, tata, hasta luego, and I will see you la próxima semana. Ciao, amigos.